called historical science. And historical geology, trying to figure out the history of the earth, paleontology, studying fossils, paleoanthropology, studying human fossils, paleoclimatology, trying to figure out what was the climate like 1 million years ago, archaeology, cosmology, and forensic science. That's what police detectives do, trying to solve the question, why is that dead body in the living room? That's a historical question. These are forms of historical science. And I can illustrate the difference between the two if I think about it for a car. A car mechanic is an operation scientist. He knows how the car operates. He knows how the pistons go up and down. He knows how the air conditioner works. And if it doesn't work, he knows how to fix it. But just because he knows how the car operates doesn't mean he knows anything about how the car came into existence. The way the pistons operate doesn't tell you how the pistons came into existence. The way the air conditioner works doesn't tell you how the air conditioner came into existence. That's a question of origins. And so the car manufacturer is the origin scientist. He knows how the car operates, but he knows how every part of that car came into existence. The question of origins is a different question than the question of operation. We know how things operate, some things about what some things operate in our universe. We know how some things go around other things, some in very elliptical orbits, some in pretty close to circular orbits, and things rotate on their axis. So we know things about how they operate, but the question is, what do people know about origins? So the question of operation is one thing, the question of origins is a different question. And we need to understand that all of the scientists, whether they're creationists or evolutionists, they have the same things to study. They have the same stars, the same galaxies, the same planets, the same stardust, the same starlight. And if they start with naturalistic assumptions, they come up with a Big Bang and billions of years for the formation, the origin of these things. Those who start with biblical assumptions look at the very same objects and they see all kinds of evidence confirming that the universe is designed and young. So we want to look at this, and I want to begin by looking at what the evolutionists know about origins, and then we'll look at what the Bible says about origins. And to keep this simple, we're going to start with our nearest neighbor, the moon, and go farther and farther out into space. So let's consider the origin of the moon. And the evolutionists have proposed several theories for the origin of the moon. They have technical scientific names. I've given them simple names to help me remember and help you. One is the sister theory. The idea here is that when the Earth was a hot metal ball spinning on its axis, no, that's not the one. I just got confused. No, the sister theory is that as there were rings around the sun, two centers of gravity developed in what is now the orbit of the Earth. And the material got pulled in around those two centers of gravity. One of those centers of gravity eventually became the Earth. The other became the moon. Nobody ever saw that happen. Nobody ever did a scientific experiment in the lab to show that that happened. People were speculating about the unobserved past to explain the moon that we see in the present. But there were lots of theoretical problems with that, as well as no observational support, so that theory has been discarded. Another one is the wife theory. Now this doesn't actually explain the origin of the moon, but explains how the moon became the satellite of the Earth. The idea is that the moon was floating through the solar system, it came close to the Earth, and the Earth looked up at the moon and said, "Hey, I really like that lady." And so the gravitation
Cool.
attraction of the Earth pulled the moon into orbit. Now, nobody ever saw that happen. Nobody ever did a scientific experiment to show that that happened. And there are huge theoretical problems, one of which is if the moon came in towards the Earth like that, it wouldn't immediately go into orbit. It would boomerang off in another direction. So that theory has been discarded. And then there's the daughter theory. And there are actually a couple variations on this. One is that when the Earth was a hot metal ball, it was spinning on its axis, it developed a little bit of a bulge on one side, and as it was spinning, that bulge stretched, and pretty soon it broke loose, cooled, and that became the moon. Another is that the Earth was bombarded with meteorites and asteroids over a long period of time, and chunks of material got blasted off the Earth out into space. It eventually all got into what is now the orbit of the moon and all got together. Nobody ever saw any of that happen. Nobody ever did a scientific experiment to show that that happened. And there are serious theoretical problems with it. And so those ideas have been discarded. But there's one other daughter theory, and that is the giant impact theory. And the idea here is that there was an object about the size of Mars floating through the solar system. It slammed into the Earth, broke off a huge chunk of material, and that all got together and became the moon. Nobody ever saw that happen. Nobody ever did a scientific lab experiment. They're speculating about the unobserved past to explain the moon that we see in the present. Well, in 2003, Discover magazine had an article, "Where did the moon come from?" Now that's exactly the question we're trying to answer. And they said, in fact, the story of the moon's origin is still slim on details. That's a scientific way of saying we really haven't got a clue. Experts are divided over whether the collision happened before or after the Earth had grown to its present size. Hey, I don't want a lot of detail. Could you just tell me, when that Mars-sized object hit the Earth, was the Earth the size it is now or a different size? They have no idea. Well, that was 2003, and you might think, well, that was 15 years ago. Science is advancing so rapidly, they surely know the origin of the moon now. Well, they didn't in 2012. In phys.org, new research provokes more questions about the origin of the moon. It's beguiled watchers since before records were kept, and today still it fills poets with pensive musings and scientists with enchanting questions. Where did the moon come from, and how did it get there? Hopefully, new research will one day provide us with a definitive answer. Until that day, though, it seems we will all have to just keep musing. Well, the evolutionists are musing. Creationists aren't, because we have the word of the Creator himself who told us when and how it came into existence.